When you think of the Roman Empire, what comes to mind? Legions, emperors, gladiators, right? But what about its economy? Have you ever wondered how it actually worked? Well, today, we're going to treat it like a giant machine. We're going to break it down to its core components and build it back up piece by piece to see exactly what made it tick.
So let's start with the big question, the one that's at the heart of it all. How did this one city on the Italian peninsula grow to command the wealth of the entire Mediterranean world? I mean, really, how did Rome get so rich? That's the mystery we're going to solve together. So here's our assembly plan for the machine. First, we're going to start with the absolute foundation, literally, the soil. Then we'll slot in the human engine that did all the work. After that, we'll connect everything with a massive network, install the software of commerce, and finally, we'll take a hard look at the real price of keeping it all running. All right, first things first, we have to lay the foundation of our machine. Because before there were legions, before senators, before aqueducts, there was something much, much more fundamental: food. The entire Roman system, the whole shebang, was built on agriculture. You see, having a reliable food surplus was, well, it was everything. It was the fuel that powered the whole operation. Thanks to that fertile Italian soil, they could grow tons of wheat, olives, and grapes. And that food is what allowed the population to boom, cities to get huge, and armies to march on a full stomach. But don't picture a bunch of small, quaint family farms here. No, the Roman elite owned these massive agricultural estates called latifundia. You should really think of them as ancient factory farms, engineered for one primary purpose: making a profit. And, this system had a huge catch. The latifundia were often worked by enslaved people, which meant they could produce goods so cheaply that the small, independent farmers just couldn't compete. They were driven out of business. So this means that from the very beginning, vast inequality was basically baked into the foundation of Rome's economy. Okay, so we've got these massive farms. Now we need the next component in our machine, the human engine. An economy doesn't run itself, right? So who is actually doing the work? Who is tilling these fields, building the cities, and serving the rich? The Roman labor market was a really stark two-tiered system. On one hand, you had free Roman citizens, all competing for jobs. But on the other hand, you had a much, much cheaper and way larger workforce of enslaved people. And they performed a staggering amount of the physical labor all across the empire. So let's just pause on that for a second. Seriously, try to put yourself in the sandals of a free carpenter or a small farmer back then. How does a system that relies so heavily on free, forced labor affect your ability to get a job, to set your prices, to just provide for your family? It had to have been an incredibly tough spot to be in. All right, so our machine has its fuel source and its engine. Now we've got to connect all the parts. For this economy to work on the massive scale of an empire, you absolutely need a network. This part is all about the wiring, the infrastructure that let all the goods and resources flow. And here's the central problem that was driving this need for connection. This city of Rome itself became so gigantic that local farms in Italy just couldn't possibly feed everyone, not to mention the legions stationed on the frontiers who needed constant supplies. The only solution was a massive, super efficient system of trade. And the Romans, being the brilliant engineers they were, tackled this systematically. They built the arteries of their economy in 3 key stages. First, build the roads for travel overland. Second, establish ports for trade by sea. And third, create markets where all those goods could actually be exchanged. And what was the result of all this? Well, you've heard the saying, all roads lead to Rome, right? That wasn't just some cute metaphor. It was a literal, hardcore economic strategy. This incredible network of roads and seaports brought grain from Egypt, metals from Spain, and wine from Gaul, all flowing right into the heart of the empire. So we've built the physical hardware of our machine. It's all connected, but any good piece of tech needs software to run, right? For an economy of this incredible scale to actually function, you need abstract systems, the tools that allow for smooth and efficient transactions. I mean, just think about it for a second. Imagine you're a merchant trying to sell olive oil from Spain to a buyer in Greece. How do you even agree on a price? Are you going to barter your oil for some of his pottery? Are you weighing out little bits of silver? It would be a complete logistical nightmare. Rome's solution to this was a total economic game changer. Standardized coins, like the famous silver denarius. This created a universal language of value. Suddenly, a coin that was minted in Rome was worth the same amount in Britain. It unified this incredibly diverse economy and made trade ridiculously efficient. And once you have this kind of sophisticated economy humming along, something else happens. People start specializing. You didn't have to just be a farmer anymore. You could be a skilled artisan, a long-distance merchant, or even a banker. And of course, the state developed its own complex system of taxation to collect all the money it needed to fund this massive enterprise. Okay, so our Roman economic machine is now fully assembled. It's powerful, it's complex, it's impressive. But like any machine, it has its vulnerabilities. It has operating costs. In this final section, we're going to look at the strains and the challenges that were built right into the system from day one. Let's talk about military conquest, because it was a total double-edged sword for the Roman economy. On the one hand, it was the engine of growth. It brought in a constant flow of new resources, land, and enslaved labor. But on the other hand, it created a really dangerous addiction. The entire system became dependent on winning more wars, all the time. But what about the pressure building up inside the machine? To keep the huge, often poor population of the cities from boiling over, the state installed a kind of safety valve, the famous grain dole. Giving out free or super cheap grain was a brilliant tool for social control, but wow, was it an immense, continuous drain on the treasury. And finally, we have a problem that feels, well, eerily modern: inflation. Here's basically how it worked. Imagine one pure silver coin buys you one loaf of bread. But when emperors got desperate for cash, they'd debase the currency. They'd melt that silver coin down and mix it with cheaper metals to make, say, 3 coins. But now each coin has less silver in it. The result, it now takes all 3 of those new coins to buy that same loaf of bread. This slowly but surely ate away at the economic security of every single Roman. So let's just step back and look at the whole machine we've built. It really was this complex, incredibly impressive system. It was powered by agriculture and trade, connected by amazing infrastructure, and defined by both immense wealth and deep, deep inequality. And ultimately, the very things that made it so powerful, conquest, slave labor, state subsidies, well, they were also the sources of its greatest weaknesses. And that leaves us with one final and really critical question. When you build such a magnificent machine that is designed from the ground up to run on constant expansion, what happens when it runs out of road?